Over the past few months, Republican-controlled state after Republican-controlled state has passed legislation making it more difficult to vote. Meanwhile, federal legislation to protect the right to vote is on life support in the U.S. Senate, with Democratic West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin coming out against it. With each day, the national fight over voting rights looks increasingly dire for voting rights advocates. But there is another side to this story. We saw it when Democratic lawmakers in Texas dramatically walked out of their state legislature and successfully delayed the passage of that state's voter suppression bill. This week, those same Texas Democrat lawmakers decided to take their fight to Washington. Tomorrow, they're going to Capitol Hill to meet with lawmakers in both the House and the Senate, urging them to pass the For the People Act. Then on Wednesday, they'll meet with Vice President Harris, whom President Biden has tasked to lead his administration's fight to protect the vote. At the same time, a new wave of grassroots action is taking place across the country. Just tonight, Bishop and civil rights leader Dr. William Barber led a rally in Charleston, West Virginia to, quote, march on Manchin. What appeared to be hundreds of West Virginians marched through West Virginia's capital to Joe Manchin's office, demanding that the senator end his support for the filibuster and his opposition to the For the People Act. And that may be just the beginning of what's shaping up to be a summer of action on this issue. Today, more than 70 pro-democracy organizations, including the grassroots protest group Indivisible, announced a new coalition to mobilize voters in support of the For the People Act during Congress's summer recess. What kind of public pressure will be enough to force some kind of national action on this issue? Joining us now is Judith Browne Dianis, Executive Director of the Advancement Project, one of the civil rights organizations leading the new coalition to advocate for voting rights over the summer. Judith, good to see you again. Thank you for being with us. We have heard tonight from Stacey Abrams talking to Joy Reid. We heard from Reverend Barber this weekend and again tonight talking to Joy Reid, saying this is the summer to call your members of Congress, to call your senators, to get out there and march, to show discontent with the things that are happening or the things that are not happening. How do you see this unfolding?
Well, thanks, Ali, for having me. And yes, you are right. It is time to turn up the heat. Democracy is on the line. And so over this summer, we will see lots of actions. For example, Advancement Project and other organizations, we have litigation that's already ongoing in places like Georgia and Florida, but we can't just leave it at the courts. We need to make sure that we are in the streets and in the legislatures. And so what we will see is people coming, like the Texas legislators, coming to Congress because we have to let members of Congress know, senators know that this is unacceptable, that we will not allow the GOP to hold our democracy hostage. And so we'll see those kinds of actions. Advancement Project has teamed up also with Black Voters Matter, and we're part of the Freedom Rides. That will be a bus ride coming from the South up to the north, arriving in Washington, D.C. on June 26th. So there will be a number of actions. The work with Indivisible, which will be across the country, getting people to call their senators. This is an all-hands-on-deck moment to save our democracy.
How do you convince people that it should be an all-hands-on-deck moment? It sort of worked with Indivisible with the campaign to prevent Republicans from repealing the Affordable Care Act in 2017. Obviously, we saw it in the social justice movements after the murder of George Floyd. But in this particular instance, for a lot of good people, this doesn't feel urgent. This doesn't feel like it's about them. If it's not about them being bused to a voting place after church on a Sunday, or it's not about long lineups for them, how do you get people to understand that this is crucial and urgent?
Well, this is about all of us. And, you know, this conversation about whether or not this should be bipartisan, et cetera, this is a nonpartisan issue. This is an American issue. And people have to understand that we have to connect the dots, right? January 6th should have shown us that democracy is under attack, that there are lies and disinformation about voter fraud, that there was a steal. That is a lie. And what we know is that there are people who want to take our country back. And so really what this is about is should Americans have a voice in our democracy? What we are seeing at the state level is just unacceptable and outrageous. It is a power grab. And what we're saying is, let's get the For the People Act passed. Let's make voting easier. Let's have all Americans be able to participate in our democracy. And let's get the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act passed, because we shouldn't have discrimination in voting. And so this is for all of us. This isn't a white and black issue. This isn't just about Latino voters or young voters. But for young voters, it's important to understand that the work that they did last summer is not over. We still have to keep working to protect our democracy.
Judith, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Judith Browne Dianis is the executive director of the Advancement Project. Thanks for your time tonight. Still ahead here, look at the agenda for a political event later this week that quite literally the entire world is going to be watching. We're going to talk with someone who briefed President Biden today ahead of his meeting with Vladimir Putin. Stay with us.
Stay restless with the icon that does the same, the RX.